Paranormal Chick here. So today we are going to talk about everything mermaid, specifically the mermaid legends from antiquity. Did you know that the first legend ever recorded and written and spoken about was in 1000 BC in Assyria? It pertains to the goddess Artagadis, whom she loved a shepherd. Unfortunately, as love stories go, she accidentally killed him during their lovemaking, and in her grief, she threw herself into a lake to become a fish. But the other gods refused to allow her to relinquish her beauty, so instead she reappeared as a mermaid, the first ever written record of a mermaid, the top half of a beautiful woman and the bottom half of a fish. But there's more to the story than that. Did you know that the first cave drawings appeared about 30,000 years ago of mermaid-like figures? And this is presumably because this is when humans began sailing the seas and exploring. 30,000 years ago is when we actually found cave drawings of mermaids. Now let's dive deep into the legend of the mermaid or siren. And believe it or not, it depends on the region and the culture. They're all different, but yet so fascinating. Like the Greeks, they called them sirens. And in their mythology, originally they were women with the lower body of a bird as well as wings. They lured sailors to their death by singing with beautiful voices. Then at some point they lost their feathers in a singing contest with the goddess Muses, who was the goddess of literature, science, and arts. And being now no longer able to fly, they flung themselves in the ocean, where they transformed into mermaids. So that's the Greek mythology of the siren or mermaid. The Romans adopted the sirens into Roman mythology as women with a fishtail, and that became the much preferred interpretation in later times. But there's more. Scottish mythology had the Keys, and that was the Maid of Water, which has the form of a woman above the waist and the tail of a salmon below the waist. Keys can grant 3 wishes to those who capture them. There's more. For Scottish people, as well as Ireland, they both share mythology, and they call them the Merrow. They are human above the waist and have a fishtail below and have webbed hands. They are benevolent and at times intermarry humans, taking human shape while on land. They wear a red cap while in the sea, which enables them to breathe underwater. And if you hide this cap from them, they will stay with you on land. Again from Scotland, the Selkies. Now I do want to make note, the Selkies, the mythology regarding the Selkies comes from different origins. Some say they're fae-oriented, some say they're a type of a shape-shifting mermaid. What a Selkie is they are beings who live in the ocean and are in the shape of seals, but can shed their seal skin and live as humans. They can be trapped on land if their human lover or husband hides their seal skin. And there are several stories about the tragedies from such relationships. In one version, Selkies are former humans who have drowned themselves. So that Selkie has more of ties into the fae culture, but ultimately they're said to be seals that can shed their skin and become human. Now, the next one you've actually seen in the Starbucks logo. Melusine. Mainland Europe has a folklore about Melusine, a freshwater mermaid, sometimes with wings as well as sometimes with a snake tail instead of a fish tail, and sometimes with 2 tails, as you see in the Starbucks logo. She married a human, but once a week. The agreement was to never enter her bathing chamber while she was bathing. Her husband saw her in her mermaid form and she left him forever. The Melusine story exists in several local legends. Notably, the city of Luxembourg has a legend that Count Siegfried of the Ardennes, who founded Luxembourg in the year 1963, married Melusina. As in other legends, she disappeared after he broke his promise and saw her taking a bath as a mermaid. A separate legend has Melusine marrying Prince Rademan of Poitou, and with him forming the royal house of Lungsing. This is almost certainly the origin of illustration showing a mermaid with a crown, and thus the original for the Starbucks mermaid. Now the next story is from the German culture, and this mermaid is called Undine, a freshwater sprite who is immortal yet has no soul. She can obtain a soul by marrying a human and bearing him a child. The legend says that she marries a human and bears him a child, after which she has a soul and starts to age. Her husband then is unfaithful, and she curses him and returns to the water. The famous story of Undine, written by Frederick de la Monte in 1811, tells that Undine is born a mermaid, but is exchanged as a child for a human child by a river god. She marries a human and thereby obtains an immortal soul. Her husband later rejects her, and Undine returns to the sea and her mermaid family, but warns her husband that he must remain faithful to her or she will be honor-bound to kill him. He fails to heed this simple warning and recklessly marries a human woman, after which Undine kills him despite her love for him. The legend of Undine seems to have inspired the fairy tale The Little Mermaid, written by Hans Christian Andersen in 1836. This is the story of the little mermaid who falls in love with a human prince and gives up her voice and tail to become human and to get a human soul. In the Disney version, she marries a prince and lives happily ever after, but in the original story, the prince marries another and the little mermaid dissolves into sea foam and then is rescued in her final moments. The Russians also have their own mythology regarding the mermaid. Russkalas shares some of the traits of sirens and mermaids, although without a fishtail. They are the ghost or undead remains of women or girls who die tragically or violently and live on the bottom of rivers and lakes. They can be seductive and dangerous, pulling young men into the waters. They have wet hair as they would die if their hair dried, and often carry a comb which allows them to conjure water while on land. They often come out of the water at night and sing into the trees and meadows. China has tales of mermaids with webbed feet and hands, while Cambodia and Thailand have well-known legends of the golden mermaid Suvamamacha, a mermaid princess who falls in love with a human prince and has a child with him. The African culture, they have a goddess or spiritual being that some still worship to this day, Mama Wata. Mama Wata is a water sprite often shown as a mermaid and revered as a great spiritual power associated with health, wealth, love, and good fortune. She is sometimes depicted with a snake around her neck, which represents both divinity and the art of divination. La Sirene from Haitian Voodoo. She is Lawa, a god spirit genius. She has many estetations, and while some seek her for an initiation into the hidden knowledge, she is also feared for her powers to lure and kill those that disrespect her. The Maying of Cameroon are normally said to be beautiful, mermaid-like figures with long, woolly hair and gape-toothed smiles. They live in rivers and the sea and bring good fortune to those who worship them. Ayara, Brazil. In Brazil folklore, Ayara, who is a mermaid, a water nymph, or a siren depending on the context of story. Ayara means something like Lady of the Lake or Water Queen. According to legend, Ayara is an immortal freshwater nymph in the appearance of a beautiful young woman with green hair and light skin who sits on a rock by the river combing her hair or dozing under the sun. When she feels a man around, she sings to gently lure him to her, to live out his life with her under the water. Philippines have a folklore pertaining to mer people. This sea koi, and it's a Philippine folklore. They are horrifying sea creatures with fish-like bodies and long green tentacles. They drown mortals and eat them. They have gill slits, are colored brown or green, and have scaly skin compared to that of fishes. On Java, there are many ancient legends, sagas, myths, and folklore stories about the Javanese mermaid queen, Nairukudu. She is tied in with many of the royals in Java's history and is considered the queen of the South Sea, the Indian Ocean, and in control of the giant waves and tsunamis that originate there. She is known to lure handsome young men into the sea from fishing boats or even the beach. She is aqua green in color and is part of the local beliefs that aqua green is a scarce color and that wearing the color will anger her. Ultimately, the legend of the siren of the mermaid spans across cultures, beliefs, and it goes back thousands of years until to current day, where we see sightings of these different mer people, mermaids, siren. Could it all be based on a fairy tale, or is there truth to these myths and legends? Ultimately, you'll have to decide on what you believe. I just know mermaids have been a part of our human culture for thousands of years, and they will continue to be so. Because as they say, legends never die.